Hello and welcome to South Tech Tutorials. Today I will be taking you guys through the use of external CSS. In the website that we are building, which is the portfolio website, we shall now use the external CSS instead of internal CSS. So let me jump into my Visual Studio Code and I show you here. So all along we have been using the style sheet of internal. So for the rest of our development, we shall shift into external CSS. So this one all along it has been internal CSS, and now we shall focus on external. Reason being, our code is compiling over and over, and in order for us to be precise and not to load the CSS and the HTML all in one page, that's why I have come up with that idea of creating a different page for the CSS, so that we can just remain with the HTML alone in these pages. So let us create a folder for the CSS. We shall create that folder inside the main folder, which is the website folder. So let's just click on new folder, then we type CSS. So this is the CSS folder where we shall create the CSS file. We shall create the CSS file inside the CSS folder. So now let us create the CSS file. We shall just right click on the CSS and then we click on new file. So from here we shall type style.css. So now we have created style.css, and this is the external CSS I'm talking about. It is that type of CSS that is created outside the page. So this is where we shall now be writing our CSS, and then we shall just be linking it to these different pages of HTML and about.html, then course.html. So now what we do, we have to just get the same styling that we did in the previous videos, which is under the style, because we don't need to type the same code over and over again. So let me just get the whole of the style CSS, the internal CSS. I'll put it inside our external CSS, which is the style.css. So I can now go back, and then let me first save by clicking on Ctrl S. So what I'm doing here, I want to make sure that we don't have any CSS in index.html. So we shall remove the style tag. We don't want too much congestion in this page. That's why I'm separating the CSS and the HTML. So the next thing we have to do now is to call this page, which is the style.css. We have to link this page to index.html. So we shall just put it under the meta and we use the link. We are linking the CSS, so we just link the CSS. So here now it tells us that the href is style.css. The relationship is style sheet, which is okay. So right now we cannot be able to get those changes which are inside the style.css, because we have to follow the directory. The style.css is inside CSS, so we have to specify that. We have to do that. If we don't include CSS, the name of the folder which is having the style.css, then we shall not be able to get the effects of the style, and we shall see that. So now let us preview this page in our browser. So you can now see we are getting the same. We have applied our external.css knowledge, and it is now working. So what I was saying, if you don't specify the name of the folder where you have created the style.css, then you will not be able to get the CSS. So let us remove, let me just leave it as style.css. Let me save and I preview changes. So you can now see we shall just get our HTML, the skeleton, without the styling. But if we take back the CSS, which is the folder, I'm doing CSS, and then inside CSS, that's when we can now say style.css. So if we put back this CSS stroke style.css, then we can now be able to get our CSS back. So you can now see this is what I have been talking about. So my emphasis here is the location is very important. If you just leave it as style.css without putting the parent directory at the moment, now for this style.css, the parent directory for style.css is the CSS folder. So you make sure that you include CSS folder, the name of the folder, you have to include it. If you just want to leave it as style.css, that means you have to just create style.css inside a website folder. So this is the importance of, of creating those folders, and this is the location. The location matters a lot when you are referencing external CSS into your HTML web page. So let's do the same thing to the about.html. We shall remove the internal CSS that we have applied for about. So we shall not, the importance of using external CSS, it really prevents us from repeating the same code of typing the same CSS over and over again. So now what I'm going to do is I will not, actually for the nav, I'll just delete the nav. What I will get here is just the image one. I will not go for the footer because we already have it in the index. So I'll get image one, show image, and then the description. I get this, and then I apply them inside our style.css. So I can just paste this here. Then what I do in my about page, about.html, I have to delete the whole of this style. We don't need, because we don't need to again use internal CSS. We are just going to stick to external. Shall just include the link for the CSS. I do the same thing here. I have to include the CSS folder, and then the style.css is inside CSS folder. So let's preview this in our web browser using live server. So you can now see we are getting the same effects as before, because in the previous video we have just been using internal CSS, but now we are diverting to external, and we shall stick to external CSS until we complete this mini project. So let's do the same for the courses page. So for the courses page, the only CSS that we need to include in our style.css, as I told you earlier, we don't need to repeat the header. We don't need to get this code again for header and nav, and we put it inside our style.css because we already have it there. If we cross check in style.css, you can now see we already have the header and the nav CSS. The same thing for ULIA and then ULIA hover. All these ones, they are here. That's why we don't need to repeat. You can see we have ULIA hover and then ULIA. So the only few things we need from the course.html, the only CSS we need to add in our external CSS starts from com app. This classes from com app up to the class of courses. We just get this CSS and then we put it let's be commenting to show that this one is for the courses page. This is how you do comments in CSS. Let's just say courses CSS. Let's start. Commenting is very important in coding. It can help other developers to really study your code when you're working in teams. Let me say we are going to push this code on GitHub during collaboration. When you have commented your code, someone can easily know where you can resume. So this is where our courses CSS ends. End of courses CSS. So commenting is very important, and this one is for the about. So we shall be modifying our pages accordingly as time goes on. So let's go back to our courses.html and then we delete the internal CSS, which starts from style. We have to delete this. Let's save the changes and we preview it using the live server on our browser. Now you can see we have not yet gotten the CSS. We are just here with our HTML, what we have just coded in the HTML page minus the CSS. I hope some of you guys have already known why the CSS is not taking effect in this page, because we have not included the link in the courses.html page. So we have to include that link. Our style.css is inside CSS folder. We have to say stroke. Now let's preview and cross check again. So you can now see we have gotten our CSS back. However, there is one part of CSS that we have not carried. So we have to go back to our page and we see the clear both. We haven't carried the clear both. let's cross check our style.css. Let's put the clear both inside there. So you can now see that's what we have been missing. We have missed out one type, one property of CSS, so we had to use clear both on the footer section so that it can push down the CSS property, which is the background color for the footer. I hope you guys have gotten something from this tutorial. I have just been focusing on how we are transferring the use of internal CSS into external CSS, and we shall continue with this method even when we're creating our contact us page for this portfolio website. So this is what I wanted to show viewers for today, and there were some guys who asked me how you can apply the external CSS, and this was the time I was waiting for. I have been using internal and inline CSS. I wanted you guys to first know how to use them as well, and now we have completed using those two, and we shall just be continuing with style.css. If this video has been helpful, give a thumbs up and subscribe if you are still new.